Hare Krishna. So, thank you all for coming. All of you are senior to me, so please give me your permission and blessings to say something of benefit. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshva Padreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So today we continuing with Canto 4, Chapter 9, verse 24, which does not seem to be visible there. So anyway, I'm hoping all of you have it in front of you. Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisaya Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Ishtva Mam Yagya Hridayam Yagyai Pushkala Dakshinai Bhuktva Cheha Shisha Satya Ante Mam Samsmarishyasi Okay, so we'll do the synonyms. Ishtva, after worshipping. Mam, me. Yagya Hridayam, the heart of all sacrifices. Yagyai, by great sacrifices. Pushkala Dakshinai, Comprehending distribution of great charities. Bhuktva, after enjoying. Cha, also. Iha, within this world. Ashishasa, blessings. Satya, true. Ante, at the end. Mam, me. Samsmarishyasi, you will be able to remember. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life, and at the time of your death you will be able to remember me. So please repeat. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way, you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life, and at the time of your death, you will be able to remember me. The purport. The most important factor in this verse is the Lord's instructions regarding how to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end of life. Ante Narayana Smriti. The result of whatever we do in executing spiritual activities is successful if we can remember Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This program of constant remembrance can be disturbed by many things, but Dhruva Maharaja's life would be so pure, as assured by the Lord himself, that Dhruva would never forget him. Thus, at the time of his death, he would remember the Supreme Lord, and before his death he would enjoy this material world, not by sense gratification, but by performing great sacrifices. As stated in the Vedas, when one performs great sacrifices, he must give charity, not only to the Brahmanas, but also to the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. It is assured here that Dhruva Maharaj would be able to perform such activities. In this age of Kali, however, the great sacrifice is the performance of Sankirtan Yagya. Our Krishna consciousness movement is designed to teach people and to learn ourselves the exact instruction of the personality of Godhead. In this way we shall continuously perform the Sankirtan Yagya and continuously chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Then, at the end of our lives, we shall certainly be able to remember Krishna, and our program of life will be successful. In this age, distribution of prasad has replaced distribution of money. No one has sufficient money to distribute, but if we distribute Krishna prasad as far as possible, this is more valuable than the distribution of money. We'll just read the translation again. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life, and at the time of your death you will be able to remember me. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kathamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll just read the translation one more time. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life, and at the time of your death you will be able to remember me. So in the first part of this purport, Prabhupada very directly says the most important factor in this verse is the Lord's instructions regarding how to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end of life. Ante Narayana Smriti. So this phrase, which Prabhupada mentions very, very often, in fact, throughout the whole Bhagavatam, in conversations, in morning walks, and all sorts of places, this Ante Narayana Smriti is from Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.6. And the verse is Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya Janma Labha Para Pumsham Ante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. And it's further mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam elsewhere in Canto 5, Chapter 3, verse 12, the priest speaking to the Lord, Dear Lord, we may not be able to remember your name, form and qualities due to stumbling, hunger, falling down, yawning, or being in a miserable diseased condition at the time of death, when there is a high fever. We therefore pray unto you, O Lord, for you are very affectionate to your devotees. Please help us remember you and utter your holy names, attributes and activities, which can dispel all the reactions of our sinful lives. So there's this ongoing theme of remembering the Lord at the time of death, and it's mentioned by various devotees, and obviously we've heard of Ajamil, calling for his son at the time of death, who happened to be named Narayan, Parikshit Maharaj, Bharat Maharaj, who even though he thought of a deer at the time of death, when he was in the body of the deer he thought of Krishna. So this thinking of Krishna at the time of death is a very prominent theme throughout the Vedic literature, and we'll just examine that a bit more closely. Firstly, here's the purport to the verse we just mentioned. The real success in life is Ante Narayana Smriti, remembering the holy name, attributes, activities, and form of the Lord at the time of death. Although we may be engaged in the Lord's devotional service in the temple, Material conditions are so tough and inevitable that we may forget the Lord at the time of death due to a diseased condition or mental derangement. Therefore, we should pray to the Lord to be able to remember His lotus feet without fail at the time of death when we are in such a precarious condition. Shri Shri Radharanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Tulsi Devi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And I thought I'll just play a clip from Srila Prabhupada for one reason, because it's always nice to hear Prabhupada's voice, and also when Prabhupada speaks, then it's guaranteed that something bona fide was said in this class. And I think maybe we can't follow it along the screen because it's not very visible right now.
Ante Narayana Smriti. At the time of death, somehow or other, if you can remember Narayana, Krishna, your life is successful. Therefore, practice. While you are strong, while you are in good life, practice. How to remember Narayana, Krishna always. Therefore, Kulasekar, Maharaj Kulasekar, he has written his Sutramala, very important. In the first sutra he said, Krishna tadiya padapankaja panjanantam paddaiva visatumi manasadaja hansa prana prana samaye kapupata putte kanthavarudhana vidhau smaranam kutaste. He is thinking, my Lord Krishna, now I am strong. Kindly give me the chance to die immediately. Give me the chance. Because now I can remember. But if I die on the natural way, when I am too old, it may be that Kapha-pitta, because this is the body of Tridhatuka, Kapha-pitta Vayu, so my throat will be choked up by mucus and I may be unconscious, I may not be able to chant at the time of death your name. So now I am strong. Please immediately give me death. But this is the secret of success. Somehow or other, if you can remember Krishna, Ante Narayana Janjana Bhapi Smaran Loki. This is the way. So there is chance. If you execute Krishna consciousness sincerely, if you execute till it is finished, then immediately Bhakta deham punarjanmanaiti mameti bhavati. If not, even if you are finished certain percentage, it is still there is chance of perfection. It is such a nice thing. Salpamapi yasya.
Well, just in case anyone didn't catch that, because the screen is not very visible, I'll just read that last part again. So Prabhupada is saying, so there is chance, if we execute Krishna consciousness sincerely, if you execute till it is finished, then it immediately, Bhakta deham punar janmanayati mameti konteya. If not, even if you have finished certain percentage, still there is chance of perfection. It is such a nice thing. So Prabhupada is giving his benediction in this class that even if we are not fully perfect, still there is chance of perfection. It is such a nice thing. But so far everything we're seeing is still along this theme of remembering Krishna at the time of death. And I know when I first came across this concept that we should remember Krishna at the time of death, I just thought, oh, okay, cool. Thanks. Thanks for this information. Okay, I'll remember to do that. you put a to-do list in the back of your mind. Okay, at the time of death, remember Krishna. Okay, good. And you don't have to think about it any time else, right? Just remember, when you're about to die, just think of Krishna. But it doesn't really work like that. And as we can see, it's quite elaborately discussed by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 5, Krishna says, "And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt." But in the purport, this is what Prabhupada, one excerpt from the purport: "Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service." Then Krishna in chapter 8 verse 6 says, "Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail." And then in verse 10, Krishna says, "One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead." And in this, in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada gives further descriptions. He says, "In this verse it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows to the Agya Chakra. The practice of Sat Chakra Yoga involving meditation on the 6 chakras is suggested here. A pure devotee does not practice such yoga, but because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his grace. This is explained in verse 14. So here we differentiating very much from those who are artificially trying to remember Krishna at the time of death, from the pure devotee, who the pure devotee dedicates his whole life to Krishna. So naturally at the time of death, he will naturally think of Krishna without any extra endeavor. Because, and which makes logical sense, let's say, we spent our whole life obsessed with football, or, obsessed with our husbands or wives. It's fairly obvious that we'll think of them at the time of death. So if we can be obsessed with Krishna in this life, then it's only natural that we will think of him at the time of death. And Prabhupada further says, the particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Sat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life. And as Prabhupada in that purport directed us to verse 14, verse 14 in chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita is, "For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service." And here is a very crucial sentence in the purport, where Prabhupada says, "A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment, and similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment." So this is the relationship between the pure devotees and the Supreme Lord. They cannot forget each other. So these things that are being sought artificially by trying to remember Krishna, you don't need to try to remember Krishna if Krishna is always remembering you. If you're a pure devotee, you can't forget Krishna, and similarly he cannot forget you. So even if you don't remember him, he will remember you at the time of death. And there's another clip of Prabhupada, but I think it probably won't be visible on the screen, and in case anyone doesn't hear, I think I'll just read it. So this is Prabhupada speaking a lecture in Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says, an interesting story has been described by our Satsvarup Maharaj in the Back to Godhead, the learned scholar and the boatman. In the boatman, in Bengal there are many rivers, and so people generally transport by boat service. So a learned scholar from Calcutta said he was going home in the village on a boat, and he was very happy. So he was asking the boatman, "My dear boatman, do you know what are these stars, this astronomy, how they are working?" "No, sir, I do not know." "Oh, your life is 25% lost. You do not know anything." Then after some time, "You know the geology, how this earth, water, they are working?" He said, "No, sir, I am a poor man. What can I know?" "Oh, your 50% of your life is lost." Then all of a sudden there was a cloud, black cloud on the sky, and there was storm. Then at that time the boatman asked, "Sir, do you know how to swim?" "No, I do not know." "Then 100% you are lost. You are going to be drowned." He jumped and he drowned. So this is the point. So you are trying to understand the whole analytical study of the material world. That is very good. But if you do not know how to remember Narayan at the time of death, then you are going to be cats and dogs. That's all. Because you are very fond of dog, especially in the Western countries, every gentleman, every lady has a dog. So what will you think at the time of death? Dog. So that is the nature's law. You will find in the Bhagavad Gita, at the time of death, the mental condition which you have created, that will carry you to the next body. Therefore, don't create your mind doggish. Make it Krishna conscious, and that is very nice. Then at the time of death, you remember Krishna, and you will be transferred to the Krishna Loka. So, we see a theme developing so far that the time of death is very significant, and we should remember Krishna at the time of death. But instead of artificially trying to remember Krishna, the pure devotee will naturally remember Krishna because of dedicating their entire life to Krishna. But it seems like, there's this whole obsession with the time of death. And so I was reading an article by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, who was asked the question, why is there this obsession with the time of death? Why is death considered so important? And so he mentioned that death is important because it's a moment of transition. It's like a crossroads. So let's say you're traveling and you come to a fork in the road, and you have to choose either to go one way or the other. And let's say one way is towards Krishna and one way is away from Krishna. But you don't have to make that decision about which path to take only when you come up to the fork in the road. You can make that decision earlier. Generally when we travel places, well, I think most of us drivers, have a planned route in mind before we leave of which direction we're going to go, more or less. So we know which way we're heading, and we know that when we come up to this fork in the road, we need to turn in this direction. When we come up to the next crossroads, we need to take another direction. You can, of course, make that decision when you reach the fork, but there's no reason you have to do that. You can make that decision much earlier. So this is the whole idea about educating ourselves at the time of death and molding our lives in such a way that we don't have to reach the point of death before we try to think of Krishna. We can make that choice now. Just like how we plan a route and we make the choice ahead of time about which route we're going to take, we can make that choice now of when the time of death comes, what will we be thinking of. We can actually decide that now by dedicating our life towards Krishna. And then naturally you won't even see, another pathway on the road. You just it won't be like a fork in the road so much. So this is what Chaitanya Charan Prabhu mentions in his article. I'll just read it, a paragraph from it. So if we offer our whole existence to Krishna, then by offering that existence to Krishna completely, we are as good as liberated in material existence. And eventually, when the time comes, we will return back to Krishna. So Jivan Mukti means one is Jivit, one is alive right now, but one has devoted oneself to Krishna, and therefore what binds us to this world is our desires to enjoy this world. And if we have devoted ourselves to Krishna, we have given up the desire to enjoy separate from Him. Then we will return to Krishna. So that's Jivan Mukti. So actually, if we practice devotional service seriously, then we can come to a state similar to that of Jivan Mukti, and then what specific way in which we die will become inconsequential. So sometimes advanced devotees may die in some accidents or in some situation which may not seem very devotional. But if they have devoted their lives to Krishna, then it won't matter how they depart. I think this is another thing that we all deep down are hoping for, that, at the time of death, we're surrounded with devotees chanting in Vrindavan or Mayapur or some holy place. And I think we're all hoping for leaving this world like that. But actually, if we become a Jivan Mukti, then we are liberated even in this body. And it won't matter actually how we depart, because we will naturally go to Krishna, whether the external circumstances are favorable or unfavorable. And I think just to kind of conclude this part of the purport, I think we've spoken about remembering Krishna at the time of death, and also about Krishna remembering us at the time of death if we're pure devotees. But the discussion will not be complete without mentioning Srila Prabhupada himself. So this is from a memory from Jai Gauranga. He says, I remember one lady raised her hand after Prabhupada had finished a Bhagavad Gita class, as she had a question. She asked, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said if one thinks of Krishna at the time of death, one will go to Krishna. Now my question is, what if I think of you at the time of death? Will it have the same effect? So she's asking Prabhupada this question. What if I think of you? What if I think of Prabhupada at the time of death? Prabhupada didn't answer right away. He closed his eyes for 2 or 3 seconds, as if he was searching for the answer, and then he smiled and said, that is very nice, he said. Yes, it will have the same effect. And on another occasion, Prabhupada mentioned that thinking of the spiritual master, because the spiritual master is going to Krishna, thinking of the spiritual master at the time of death is the same as thinking of Krishna at the time of death. The same result will occur. And so that's us remembering. If we can remember Prabhupada, if we can remember Krishna at the time of death, that's wonderful. If we can remember Prabhupada at the time of death, or our spiritual master, that's also wonderful. But what about Prabhupada remembering us? So this is an account from Srila Prabhupada's disciple Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada appeared to Prithuputra Swami, the first French sannyasi, just before Prithuputra died. Maharaj had done a lot of service for Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission, but after Srila Prabhupada's physical demise, Prithuputra left Krishna consciousness. He broke the regulative principles and went back to the sinful lifestyle he had led before. Nevertheless, he never criticized ISKCON or Krishna consciousness. Some years later, Prithuputra contracted AIDS. As the disease progressed, he ended up in hospital, and as it progressed further, he was hooked onto the machines which kept him alive. During his last, he was in a coma. As he was about to die, doctors gathered around his bed and tried to estimate how many days, if not hours, he had left. As they discussed his condition, all of a sudden, Prithuputra opened his eyes, sat up in his bed, and looked towards the door. "Prabhupada, you came," he said. Then he laid back on his bed, closing his eyes, and died. Doctors later told the story to the devotees. So we can see that just like how we're trying to remember Krishna at the time of death, or we're dedicating our life to him so that we naturally remember him at the time of death, and even if we don't, Krishna wants to remember us at the time of death. The same goes for Prabhupada. We can remember Prabhupada at the time of death and have the same result, and if not, Prabhupada can remember us. And here, even a devotee who had served Srila Prabhupada very sincerely, but unfortunately had some difficulties later on, and stopped practicing, still at the time of death he saw Prabhupada and said, "Prabhupada, you came." So this gives us hope that whatever level we reach, Prabhupada can come for us at the time of death if we dedicate our life to him. Then, so this was the kind of first part of the purport, very much about the time of death and returning back to God. And the kind of second half of the purport is dealing with Dhruva Maharaja's sacrifices performing in this world, and where the Lord gave him the benediction that he would enjoy this material world, not by sense gratification, but by performing great sacrifices. And Prabhupada mentions that in this age, however,